A king sits in a palace of cedar in Jerusalem, holding a reed pen over parchment, and long for a place where time simply ceases to exist. We think the verse means we are immortal beings trapped. But look at the man bleeding by the door. He is made of dust and water. His lungs will eventually fail. His knees will give out. His hands will tremble. And one day, his body will be buried in the rocky soil of the Judean hills. He is not going to serve this earthly master for 10 million years in an ethereal, timeless void. He is not volunteering for infinity. He is surrendering his horizon. The servant is saying, "As far as my eyes can see down the road of my own life, I belong right here, to the vanishing point, to the edge of his mortal vision." Olam is not the absence of time. It is the totality of the time he has been given, stretching out until the atmospheric haze obscures the end. He is giving the master the rest of his road, however long that road happens to be. The ancient mind understood this boundary. They knew the horizon was distant, but they knew it was intimately tied to the earth, to the body, to the limits of human sight. They did not try to comprehend endless, timeless space. They just looked at the path in front of them and made a choice about who they would follow into the mist. But what happens when you erase that vanishing point? What happens when you take that physical, grounded boundary and you force the human mind to carry the weight of a Greek? Limitless infinity in temporary bodies, desperately wanting to go home to the infinite. But if you look closer at the dust on the streets, limitless infinity, you do not get spiritual enlightenment. You get a very specific kind of modern despair. You lie awake in the dark, the blue light of a screen illuminating your face. Scrolling through the milestones of other people's lives, you can feel the tightness in your throat, the heavy thrum of blood in your own chest. You are running the calculations of your timeline, the years you have spent, the decades you might have left, the career tracks, the relationships you are desperately trying to hold together. We are a species exhausted by the sheer volume of tomorrow. When you absorb the Greek idea of eternity, when you genuinely believe you are an infinite creature trapped in a temporary biological cage, time becomes your enemy. You begin to measure your short, fragile, 70 or 80 years against a limitless, infinite scale, and against an infinite scale. Every decision feels paralyzingly heavy, and yet completely insignificant. You try to cram forever into a single lifetime. You try to build a legacy that will never decay. You hustle, you stress, and you panic because you believe you are somehow falling behind on an endless track. Your anxiety is not a random psychological glitch of ancient Israel. At the precise Hebrew letters drying on the king's parchment, you start to realize the traditional reading misses the point completely. It is the symptom of carrying a weight your body was never engineered to hold. God did not design your neurological system to process infinity. He gave you eyes that can only see a few miles before the atmosphere bends the light and obscures the view. He gave you a mind that can plan for the winter, maybe sketch out a rough framework for the next decade, but cannot possibly comprehend the cascading variables of a century from now. We were built for the dirt, for the local, for the immediate horizon. When we try to play the infinite game, when we try to manage the endless forever, we break. We fracture under the pressure of trying to be omnipresent in our worries and eternal in our planning. We were never meant to carry the whole road. We were only ever meant to walk as far as the vanishing point, and let God handle the mist. Eternity is not a limitless void you are required to manage. It is a boundary line you are invited to trust. When you realize Olam means the hidden horizon, the verse in Ecclesiastes completely inverts. It stops being a heavy burden, and it becomes a massive, physical relief. You do not have to figure out forever. You only have to walk faithfully to the edge of what you can see. The question is, what the king actually wrote? And the answer changes how you carry the weight of your own life. But to understand exactly how that relief works, you have to look at the other things the king observed before he wrote that famous line, because he did not just look at the human heart. He looked at the relentless, crushing machinery of the world itself. The sun rises. The sun sets. The wind blows to the south. The wind turns to the north. The king watches the crushing, mechanical rhythm of the earth. Generations come. Generations go. The dust returns to the ground. The water returns to the sea. And nothing seems to fundamentally change. You can hear the heavy, rhythmic grind of the millstone in the poetry of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. A time to plant, and a time to uproot, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh. It is a closed system, a relentless, inescapable loop of biology and seasons. But then, right in the middle of the loop, the king pauses. He looks at the heavy machinery of the world, and he writes this: He has made everything beautiful in its time. And then, the drop. Also, he has put Olam in their hearts, so that man cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. Read that carefully. We have spent centuries reading a Greek, philosophical idea of time into an ancient Hebrew text, and it is quietly destroying our peace. He put the vanishing point inside of us so that we cannot find out the whole story. The limitation is not a design flaw. It is a mercy. If we could see the infinite, if we could trace the endless, cascading chain of cause and effect across thousands of years, we would try to control it. We would try to play the architect. We would attempt to carry the crushing weight of the entire universe on our fragile, water and dust frames. God did not give us a map of the infinite. He gave us the ache of the horizon. We know the road continues. We can feel it deep in our bones that the story does not end when our physical sight fails. We know there is a reality beyond the atmospheric haze, but we are structurally, intentionally blocked from seeing the final destination. The ache you feel in your chest is not a desire to escape your physical body and float in a timeless void. It is the tension of living with a vanishing point. It is the profound, beautiful frustration of being a creature who can perceive that the road goes on forever, but who is only given enough light to walk the mile right in front of them. He put Olam in your heart so you would look forward. He veiled the end so you would have to trust him with the mist. We drag the concept of forever into our daily decisions. We measure our short, fragile, 70 or 80 years against a limitless, but this raises a terrifying question for the ancient mind. If we cannot see past the vanishing point, how do we know? The road doesn't just lead into the dark. What happens when the time we can see is completely defined by failure, by debt, and by total collapse? To answer that, you have to look at what God does when a human timeline completely runs out. The sun beats down on the Judean hillside. The soil is hard under the farmer's sandals. The harvest fails. The debts multiply. The ancestral plot is sold off, acre by acre. A family is reduced to working as day laborers on the exact dirt their grandfather once owned. Year passes after year. The calendar becomes a cage. When you cannot see past the vanishing point, and everything you can see is broken. Time feels like a prison sentence. You look toward the horizon. You see only generational poverty. You see a road paved with irreversible loss. If the future is just an endless accumulation of consequences, then human history is a tragedy. Every generation inherits the debts of the last. The rich get richer. The poor lose their inheritance. And the vanishing point looks like a cliff. But then comes the 50th year, the 10th day of the 7th month, the Day of Atonement. A priest stands on the Temple Mount, expanse of infinity, wondering why we feel so constantly behind, so anxious, so overwhelmed by the sheer volume of time. He raises a curved ram's horn, a shofar, to his lips. He takes a deep breath. He blows a blast that shatters the morning air. The sound echoes across the stone courtyards. It rolls out into the valleys. It reaches the ears of the exhausted laborers in the fields. It is the Yovel, the Jubilee. The horn sounds, the iron grips loosen. The debts vanish. The invisible ledgers are wiped clean. The indentured servants drop their sickles. They pack their woven bags. They step off the estates of the wealthy. They turn around and walk back to the thresholds they lost decades ago. The land rests. The soil breathes. The heavy, grinding machinery of human economics completely stops. God's timeline is not a relentless march into the dark. It is a circle of redemption. This is the secret of the Hebrew horizon. This is why Abraham can plant a tree in a desert he does not own. This is why the slave can put his ear against a wooden doorpost and surrender his freedom to the edge of his vision. They know who holds the territory beyond the atmospheric haze. When a human timeline completely collapses, the biblical God does not shrug and point to an infinite void in the sky. We think God burdened us with an appetite for the infinite that our finite bodies can never digest. This is the disease. He steps down into the dirt. He blows a horn. He fractures the trap. He hits the reset button on the soil itself. He reclaims what human hands have lost. The slave goes free. The land rests. The horizon is secured. And all of it points to the final, beautiful reality of the boundary line sitting right now in your own chest. An old man plants a slow-growing tree in a borrowed desert and anchors a future he will never live to see. A servant bleeds against a wooden doorpost and trades his freedom for a household he trusts. A king writes a sentence in a cedar palace and names the boundary line inside the human chest. A congregation makes a mistake in the wilderness, and the error is concealed from their eyes. A priest blows a horn on the 50th year, and a generation of exhausted slaves walks backward into their inheritance. A dusty road vanishes into the atmospheric haze, and the mercy of God waits at the edge of the mist. Same boundary, same horizon, but maybe the part that stays with me most is the tamarisk tree of the modern mind. We are suffocating under the weight of forever. The king was not diagnosing us with a desire for infinity. Abraham did not plant a fast-growing weed for his own comfort. He dug his bare hands into the sun-baked soil and planted a slow, grinding survivor for a son who could barely walk. He did not need to see the end of the timeline. He did not demand a map of infinity. He only needed to trust the God who held the vanishing point. If you are in a season where the sheer volume of tomorrow is crushing you, where you are frantically trying to calculate the infinite and feeling yourself fracture under the weight, the ancient Hebrew texts offer you permission to stop. Your limitation is not a curse. It is an invitation. You do not have to carry forever. You do not have to figure out the end of the story. You only have to walk as far as your eyes can see and plant something faithful in the dirt right in front of you. And may the God who intentionally veiled the end of the road from your eyes meet you at the edge of your horizon and give you the peace to leave the mist to him. If this opened something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by the weight of the future. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. He was giving us a boundary. Eternity is not a limitless expanse of time. It is a vanishing point. He has built the grandest temple the ancient world has ever seen. He has gathered the gold of Ophir, stockpiled the silver, to feel the physical weight of this word. You cannot stay in the luxurious palace in Jerusalem. You have to leave the stone walls behind. You have to walk backward through the centuries, into the unforgiving heat of the Negev desert, to stand beside a man who had no palace, no nation, and no guarantee of tomorrow. A man standing beside a disputed well of water, digging his hands into the dry dirt, planting a single tamarisk tree. To understand how badly we misread the king's words, you have to look at the lens through which we view the world. We read the scriptures in English, but we process them in Greek. For the last 2 millennia, the Western mind has been quietly colonized by the philosophy of men who debated on cold marble steps in Athens. When Greek thinkers like Plato looked at the universe, they divided reality into 2 distinct realms. Down here is the physical world. It is dirty. It is decaying. And it is constrained by the relentless ticking of a clock. It is a world of bodies that age, crops that fail, and statues that crumble into dust. But up there, in the realm of the forms, is the infinite, and watched foreign merchants drag apes and peacocks through his courtyard gates. The polished stone floor is cool beneath his leather sandals. The Greek concept of eternity is a state of absolute, frozen perfection. It is a timeless void where nothing changes, nothing ages, and nothing moves. It is a static, limitless expanse of geometry and light, completely divorced from the sweat and the blood of human history. And when the early church began to translate the Hebrew texts into a Greek-speaking empire, this philosophical virus slipped quietly into the water supply. We started projecting Plato's timeless perfection onto the ancient Hebrew god. We began to believe that time itself was the enemy, a temporary cage holding our immortal souls hostage until we could finally escape into a timeless, infinite void. But the men who wrote the scriptures were not Greek philosophers. They were shepherds. They were tent makers. They were desert nomads who lived and died by the rhythm of the seasons, the rising of the sun, and the calloused skin on their feet. The biblical concept of time is not a static realm of timeless perfection. It is a road walking forward into the mist. To the ancient Hebrew mind, time is not an enemy to be escaped. Time is the raw material, the canvas where God actually does his work. The future is not an infinite blank space hovering above us in the sky. It is the horizon line stretching out straight ahead of us, the air heavy with the scent of burning frankincense. And he writes a sentence that has haunted humanity for 3,000 years, exactly at eye level. When we force the Greek idea of limitless infinity onto the Hebrew text, we break the engine of the story. We start reading the scriptures as a manual for evacuating the earth, rather than a blueprint for redeeming it. We treat the human body as a temporary waiting room, rather than the very architecture where the divine presence chooses to dwell. The difference is not just academic. It changes the way you breathe. If eternity is infinite, timeless perfection, then the agonizing crawl of human history is ultimately a mistake. But if the Hebrew writers meant something else entirely, something grounded, something earthy, something tethered to the dirt beneath your sandals, then the king's words in Jerusalem carry an entirely different meaning. To see what that weight actually looks like, you have to watch a man stake a claim in a desert that does not belong to him. The dust of the Negev coats his ankles. The sun burns the back of his neck. The sheep bleat in the unforgiving heat. A Philistine king stands across from him. A dispute over a well of water. A trade of 7 ewe lambs. An oath sworn in the dry dirt. Abraham secures the water. The well of Beersheba belongs to him, but the land does not. He is a wanderer. He is an alien. He has set eternity in the human heart. You have probably heard it quoted in sermons. You have probably seen it painted. He owns nothing but the woven goat hair tents on his back and the impossible promises ringing in his ears. He holds a fragile treaty with a local king. The peace could break tomorrow. The water could dry up next season. And then he does something strange. He turns away from the well. He digs his bare hands into the sun-baked soil. He plants a tamarisk tree, not a fast-growing shrub, not a temporary desert weed. A tamarisk is a slow, grinding, deep-rooted survivor. Its roots drill relentlessly into the bedrock to find hidden water. Its branches grow thick and wide. It takes decades to cast a meaningful shadow. Abraham is an old man. His skin is weathered, his body is failing. He will not live to sit under its mature branches. He will not feel its thick bark or shelter under its full canopy. The tree is not for him. It is for a son who is barely walking. It is for a grandson who has not been born. It is for a nation that exists only in a whisper. Abraham finishes the planting. He stands up. He wipes the grit from his hands. He feels the cool wind coming off the water. And Genesis chapter 21 records that in this exact moment, beside this tiny green sapling, he calls on the name of the Lord. He calls him El Olam. In English, your Bible probably says the everlasting God on decorative wooden signs, or heard it read aloud at funerals while a casket hangs suspended over an open grave. The eternal God, the God of infinity. But Abraham is not a Greek philosopher. He is not looking up into a static, timeless void in the sky. He is looking down at a fragile seedling in the dirt. He is looking forward along a road he cannot see the end of. He is not making a theological statement about timelessness. He is planting a flag in the mud. The tree is not a symbol of limitless infinity. It is a biological anchor for a future he cannot fully see. When Abraham calls God El Olam, he is using a word that will echo through the rest of the Hebrew texts. It is the exact same word the king in Jerusalem will write down centuries later. It is the word that is supposedly sitting inside your own chest. But to understand what Abraham actually meant, and what the king truly wrote, you have to look at the letters themselves. You have to see the root hiding beneath the soil. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. The king in Jerusalem is reflecting on the heavy burden of human existence, the relentless cycle of living and dying, of weeping and laughing. And he writes this: He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart. The word your English Bible translates as eternity is the Hebrew noun Olam. The verse is offered as comfort, a reminder that we are made for more than this. Same verse. Again and again. It appears over 400 times in the Old Testament, and translators almost always render it as forever, everlasting, or perpetual. But biblical Hebrew is not an abstract, philosophical language. It is a spatial, physical language grounded in the dirt and the body. To understand what a Hebrew noun actually means, you have to trace it down to its verbal root. The noun olam is built on the root verb alam, and alam does not mean infinity, limitless space, or the absence of time. It means to hide. It means to conceal, or to be kept out of sight. You can see the root at work in Leviticus chapter 4, verse 13. The text describes a situation where the entire congregation of Israel makes a mistake. But the error is alam. It is hidden, concealed from the eyes of the assembly. They cannot see it. So how does a word meaning hidden become the word we translate as eternity? Picture yourself standing in the arid expanse of the Negev desert, looking down a long, straight, dusty road. You can see the stones near your feet. You can see the path stretching out for a mile, maybe two, but eventually, way out in the distance, the road hits the horizon. The atmospheric haze takes over. The details blur into the skyline. The road vanishes from your sight. It does not mean the road ceases to exist. It simply means the path has stretched beyond your physical capacity. Same assumption every time it is spoken. Most people assume this means God placed a limitless, infinite clock inside the human chest to see where it goes. That distant horizon line, that vanishing point where the known fades into the unknown, is Olam. If something about this spatial, the grounded way of reading the text is unlocking a door you didn't know was there, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the king in Jerusalem looks at the human heart, and he realizes what God actually placed inside of us. He did not give us a limitless capacity to comprehend infinity. He gave us a horizon line. Olam is not the absence of time. It is time stretching out until it disappears from our view. It is the distant, hazy edge of the future that we know is there, but cannot possibly control, map, or understand. When the biblical writers say God's mercy is Olam, they are not making a mathematical claim about an infinite number of years. They are saying that if you look as far down the road of your life as your eyes can possibly strain, His mercy will be standing at the vanishing point. And if you want to see how this changes the actual trajectory of a human life, you have to watch a spiritual hard drive programmed to desire heaven, to look past the dirt, the grief, and the decaying bodies of this world. What happens when a man is handed his freedom and actively chooses to throw it away? The 7th year arrives. The crops are rotated. The debts are cleared. The ledger is wiped clean. A Hebrew servant stands at the threshold of his master's house, holding a choice. The law in Exodus 21 is absolute. 6 years you work. The 7th year you walk away, free of charge, free of debt. You pack your belongings. You step out of the courtyard. and you walk back into your own life. But a strange provision sits in the middle of the code. What if the servant refuses the road? What if he looks at the master, looks at the house, and says, "I love my master. I will not go out free." The master does not hand him a scroll to sign. He takes him to the door. He places a sharp metal awl against the lobe of the servant's ear. He drives the iron through the flesh and straight into the wooden doorpost of the house. You can hear the metal bite into the timber. A drop of blood hits the stone floor. A physical mark, a permanent, visceral attachment to the architecture of the household. And the text says, "From that moment on, he shall serve his master Olam." Your English translation likely says, "He will serve him forever."